So in this video, we're going to have a little introduction to the clouds by Aristophanes. So the background for this is that during the 5th century, the Greeks and especially the Athenians become very interested in drama and the performance of the kinds of things that had previously been very important in poetry. What we see happening is, we have emerging out of a certain form of, of very old religious ritual. We have the emergence of the representation of very important social ideals being dramatized through performances by an increasing number of actors, starting out with one actor interacting with a chorus, and over a relatively short period of time, one or two more actors are added. All of these actors are wearing masks that represent the characters that they are portraying, and the chorus is there to provide music and dance, and to represent the sort of traditional view. This might be the standpoint of the playwright, or the idea that the playwright is trying to get across, or it might be a traditional, customary, sort of conventional wisdom kind of idea that's being played with or dealt with or challenged in some way by the play. We start with tragedy, and tragedy is in some ways very analogous to epic poetry. In other words, tragedy tends to involve important figures in society, heroic kinds of figures, who through misdeeds or misactions end up creating difficulties for themselves and their community. Often these are enforced by the gods, who sometimes appear at the end of the story. An actor representing a god is lowered down from the proscenium by a machine at the very end of the play to dispense justice, and this is called Deus ex machina, which is a phrase still used in drama today. And so the most important of these early tragic playwrights include Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, about whom more later. But the tragedy tends to reinforce social mores in a way very similar to epic poetry. So in other words, in Homer, as in Sophocles, we see people suffering because of pride and selfishness, because they are not conscious of the responsibility that they have to the community that is represented by moral uprightness. What we have in comedy is something a little bit more focused, more pointed. Comedy develops as a way of attacking something society has done. Instead of focusing on an abstract failing like pride or arrogance or greed or something like this, comedy tends to focus on a particular target in real life society that the playwright feels is tearing society down, and it uses comedic tools. It uses ridicule in particular to make this target look as offensive as possible, make it worthy of laughter, but also worthy of repulsion. The kind of ridicule is often very vulgar. Down to involving bodily fluids and the most vulgar elements of everyday life, as a way of sort of almost literally painting this target with shit in order to try to tear it down so that it stops being a problem for society. And so comedy is very much it's offensive in every sense of the term. It's designed to make people laugh, but to make them laugh at something that the playwright is targeting as a danger, as targeting as something that is bringing down society from the inside that needs to be taken care of. Um, One of the foremost practitioners of old comedy in ancient Athens is Aristophanes. Aristophanes wrote a large number of plays, of comedic plays in the dozens. Only 11 of which actually survive. And so the story that we're looking at, The Clouds, it takes place relatively early in Aristophanes' career, from amongst the surviving plays. And one of your options for the paper that you're going to write is to look at whether the kinds of targets, the kinds of ways in which Aristophanes uses his plays, it changes over the course of his career by comparing The Clouds with something else that comes later. Notice the dates here. The Clouds comes most of Aristophanes' work comes during the Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War takes place between 431 and 404, and so most of Aristophanes' plays are written against the background of Athens being at war with Sparta, and being at war with Sparta over the very idea of what it means to be Greek. And so this is, there is a great deal of urgency involved in the cultural expression that takes place in Athens during the 5th century, and that's very much true for Aristophanes in particular. The nature of comedy itself changes over the course of the classical era. The origins, as with tragedy, lie in these Dionysian rites that go back into the archaic period. But starting from after the Persian Wars, we see the Dionysian festival that takes place every year at Athens involves the performance of the standardizes around the performance of 3 tragedies and 1 comedy. And so every year the Athenian people would assemble, and they would hear 3 tragic performances and 1 new comedy. And even the new tragedies that are being written every year, the subject matter was often very familiar to the Athenian audiences. The story of Oedipus, the story of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, and Orestes and Electra, the story of Medea and Jason. All of these stories are sort of known to them from legend to some extent or another. And so the way in which the tragedy plays out is the real purpose of going to see the play, and the way in which the characters play off each other. The comedies would be new plays about new problems, and would always be provocative, deliberately provocative, obviously. During the period from the Persian War to the end of the Peloponnesian War, most of the 5th century, old comedy is characterized by the kind of plays written by Aristophanes, vilification of public targets, use of scatological and sexual innuendo, and being extravagantly ridiculous in order to rile up, make the audience laugh, make the audience provoked into seeing things from the playwright's point of view. After the Peloponnesian War, things start to change. Athens starts to dumb down its comedies, so that by the time we get to new comedy, we're dealing, instead of public targets and urgent needs for for change. We have much more of an entertainment orientation, much more use of stock characters. Old comedy is meant to cause people to laugh and to laugh at something, but it is also a call to action. Each of these old comedies is designed to provoke. They're designed to provoke change. And so, Aristophanes is writing these plays that are bugle calls to the Athenian populace that you have to act now before it's too late to get rid of this horrible thing that is in your midst. In the case of the clouds, that problem is sophistry. Essentially, the situation that Athens has created for itself in turning itself into a democracy is that it creates a market for people wanting to be able to speak persuasively. Once Athens becomes a democracy, then anybody can become a speaker. Anybody can be can get up and make a speech and attempt to persuade groups of citizens. And so this gives rise to a lot of problems, including demagogues that are persuading people, and building followings that are entirely in their own interests, that are entirely selfish and inward looking. For Aristophanes, sophistry is even worse. What sophistry is these philosophers come to Athens in order to teach people how to argue persuasively, regardless of truth, regardless of the merits of what it is that they're arguing. And so as a result, sophistry can teach you. In fact, the way that sophists teach rhetoric is to teach you to be able to effectively argue either side of a position. Whether you're arguing the side that is supported by the facts, that is truthful, or you're arguing something that is entirely false. As long as you're persuasive, that's what matters. Aristophanes sees this as being horrifyingly invidious because it encourages moral relativism. What I mean by moral relativism is if you are able to persuade people that something is true, then whatever is true is whatever people say that it is. And truth and justice and right and wrong can change from day to day depending on how people have been persuaded and who the best speechmaker is. What is true, what is good, what is just, is whatever people decide. And so as a result, right and wrong comes to be meaningless. Aristophanes believes in that Athens' greatness comes from holding on to its traditional beliefs, holding on to its customs. Sophism, it teaches people to throw away that kind of thing so that morality becomes a weather vane pointing one way one day and another direction the next. And this is going to lead very rapidly to Athens being completely morally unmoored and to bring about its own destruction. This is one of the things that Aristophanes is trying to get across in this play. And so Aristophanes is emphasizing the tradition against what is newfangled modern kinds of ideas, he makes his hero Strepsiades, a man who is the salt of the earth, an ordinary farmer who is very easily endangered by all of these manipulative peoples that he comes to deal with in this modern morally relativistic Athens that he is twisted around with, and the name Strepsiades means twisted. He's twisted, not inherently, but because he's twisted around by the forces that are changing and perverting Athens. And so, all sorts of things that are old-fashioned are valued in this play, put up against their counterparts that represent things that are new and part of this perversion of Athens' moral tradition. The key characters involved in this play. So we have Strepsiades, who married an aristocratic lady, and so we have this country person married to a city aristocratic person, and this sort of represents the divide of Athens itself. As I mentioned, the divide between the countryside and the coast, between the country people and the city people. Their son is Philippides, who is already morally disconnected. He's accumulating this huge amount of debt, and he doesn't care about the fact that it's going to make life horrible for his own father. And so Strepsiades has to deal with this debt that's incurred by his selfish and self-indulgent son. There's also this character called Socrates. The Socrates in the play is the head of the sophists and the leader of the thinkery, or the ponditorium, or whatever it's called in the translation you're looking at. I put Socrates in quotes, and this is why, for the following reason. The Socrates, quote unquote, that's in the play is diametrically opposite from the Socrates of real life. The real-life philosopher Socrates rejects the sophists, rejects moral relativism, and goes in search of universal truth, a universal truth that is beyond what humans decide, beyond even what the gods decide, that is inherent in the world itself. And for Aristophanes, interestingly enough, this is just as much of a danger to tradition as the sophists. The sophists teach moral relativism, which rejects and throws away tradition. But Socrates, the real Socrates, is going around questioning our assumptions, questioning the things that we believe irrationally, that are superstitious, that are part of tradition, goes in search of things that are true reason, that can be discovered through reason, that lead us toward what is universal truth, universal right and wrong, universal justice. He does this by breaking down traditional assumptions and beliefs. And so for Aristophanes, Socrates is just as much of a threat to Athens as the sophists, even though they're diametrically opposed to each other. And so Aristophanes attempts to kill two birds with one stone by painting Socrates as the leader of the sophists. And so this is this huge slander against Socrates, tarring him with the moral relativism of the sophists. And this is one of the things that, again, this is an option for, as you're writing about the clouds, to talk about the real Socrates versus the Socrates in the play, and the character assassination that Aristophanes engages in by making him the leader of the thinkery. Other characters come into play during the course of the clouds. There are the students of Socrates that are the background for the discussions between Socrates and Strepsiades over the meaning of the natural world, and where rain comes from, and all this sorts of things that reveal the moral bankruptcy of the sophists. The creditors that are part of the problem in the first place, that involve the debt that Strepsiades is attempting to deal with on behalf of his son. And in the middle of the play, there's this debate between characters that are just referred to as just argument and unjust argument. And the way in which this debate plays out is sort of the centerpiece of the play. It's a discussion of how sophistry works to persuade people despite being on the wrong side of right and wrong, of truth and falsehood. So as you're reading The Clouds, here are the kinds of things you want to take a look at. First of all, what is this play about? The question of indicting the sophists is the main theme, but you want to look at all the things that Aristophanes is trying to say, and he's trying to say a great deal. The presence of women. There aren't really any women in this play. Strepsiades' wife, Philippides' mother, is off stage, and so does this have any relevance to the story, or is it just the fact that the way that the story plays out? The debate. You want to look very closely at the debate, and in particular, who wins this debate and how they do so. By what means the person who wins this debate wins it, and what this means for what Aristophanes is trying to say, the nature of sophistry, and the ending. The ending is kind of dark. There are two key moments at the end of the play that involve how Philippides acts toward his father, and how Strepsiades in turn reacts in response to everything that's happened to him, that brings the climax of the play. So what does it mean that the play ends this way, and is there a certain amount of irony involved in Aristophanes using these devices to make his point? What is this play really saying about religion? The arguments that quote unquote Socrates makes, that the sophists make about Zeus and the nature of religion. Why is this a problem? They're set up sort of as a straw man, but they reflect something real that's going on in Athens as the attitude toward the gods shifts, and reason and expression and the empowerment of mortals becomes more important. The role of religion in this play carries almost a certain level of desperation. And then finally, this character of Socrates and his relation to the real Socrates. Take a look at how that plays out in the course of the story. And we'll talk more about The Clouds in class. But for now, that's